It's New Year's Eve, and I'm pretty sure I'm the only person left in my apartment building who isn't celebrating or hosting something loud. Music pulses through the wall from 4C. Laughter drifts down the hallway from the second floor. Somewhere, people are counting down to midnight already. My phone lies face down on the coffee table. I turned it over an hour ago because I couldn't stand watching the group chat explode with photos of everyone looking happy and drunk and alive. 3 months ago, I would have been in those pictures. 3 months ago, Amanda and I would have been getting dressed for the biggest party of the year at her best friend's loft downtown. 3 months ago, my life still felt like it had direction. Tonight, the apartment feels wrong. Too still. Too hollow. I've lived here for 2 years, but without Amanda's throw pillows on the couch and her plants by the window, it feels temporary, like a place I'm just borrowing. Like a hotel room someone forgot to personalize. I should have taken the photos down by now. Wedding shots. Vacation memories. Her smile frozen in every frame. The smile that once convinced me everything would turn out okay. I lift my coffee mug and realize it's cold. It's been that way for a while. I can't even remember making it. Time doesn't work the way it used to. Now it stretches and collapses all at once. Workdays at Summit Technologies crawl by, each support ticket feeling heavier than the last. Then suddenly it's Friday, and I can't remember anything I did outside of staring at a screen. Yesterday afternoon, my manager Tom stopped by my desk. "So, got plans for tomorrow night?" he asked, trying, and failing, to sound casual. Tom's a good guy. He really is. So I told him I was thinking about taking the overnight monitoring shift, just in case something went wrong while everyone else was out partying. The look on his face told me I'd said the wrong thing. Pity mixed with concern. The same look people have been giving me ever since Amanda left. "You sure?" he asked. "It's New Year's Eve. You shouldn't be watching server logs." "I'm sure," I said, even though I wasn't sure about anything anymore. Except that I couldn't sit through another party answering questions from well-meaning people who thought introducing me to their single friends would fix everything. Tom nodded slowly. "Well, if you change your mind, my door's open. Literally. I'm having people over." I thanked him and turned back to my screen, pretending to be deeply focused until he walked away. The truth is, I did change my mind, just not the way he expected. An hour later, I called him and said I'd handle the monitoring from home instead. The job doesn't actually require being in the office. I could do it in pajamas if I wanted. But what I really wanted was a reason. An excuse. Something simple to say when people asked what I was doing tonight. Now it's New Year's Eve, and I'm sitting here in these worn-out pajamas, watching the clock creep closer to midnight like it's doing this on purpose. Like it knows. Like it's enjoying the joke. Amanda loved New Year's Eve. She treated it like a holiday that deserved preparation. Weeks of planning. Outfits chosen carefully. Reservations booked months ahead. "It's about new starts," she used to say. Her face lit up with hope. "Every year gives you another chance." I wonder if she's starting over tonight in Denver. I wonder if she's wearing that silver dress she bought last January. The one she never got to wear because I worked late and we missed our reservation. I wonder if her new boyfriend notices how she counts down from 10, getting louder and more excited with every number, throwing her hands in the air at midnight like she's won something. I shake my head, trying to push the images away. This is what being alone does. Your thoughts circle back to the same memories, picking at them until they hurt all over again. I need something to focus on. I pull my laptop closer and open the monitoring dashboard. Everything looks fine. Green across the board. No alerts. No emergencies. No reason for me to be here except habit and avoidance. The refrigerator hums quietly behind me. Somewhere outside, people are laughing. The rent notice is still on the kitchen counter. I noticed it 3 days ago and pretended it wasn't there. $50 increase starting in February. It doesn't sound like much, unless you're already counting every grocery trip in your head. $50 feels enormous when you're trying not to admit your savings are shrinking. The lawyer wasn't cheap. Neither was paying for a storage unit for Amanda's things because I couldn't stand seeing them, and she wasn't ready to deal with them yet. I think about calling my brother. He's probably at a packed house party in Portland, surrounded by noise and friends and life. He's been texting me all week, trying to convince me to drive down. "You can't spend New Year's alone," he wrote. That's depressing. He's not wrong. But the idea of driving 3 hours just to fake a smile and pretend I'm okay feels worse. At least here, I don't have to perform. I can just exist as I am, a 35-year-old man whose life didn't follow the plan. sitting alone on New Year's Eve because he doesn't have the energy to pretend otherwise. Fireworks start going off early somewhere nearby. Sharp cracks followed by whistles and distant booms. I used to love fireworks. Amanda and I would bundle up and walk down to the waterfront every year, finding a spot where we could see the Space Needle glowing in the dark. She'd tuck her hand into my coat pocket to keep warm. We'd kiss at midnight while the sky exploded with color. I press my forehead against the cold window. It makes me flinch, but I leave it there. Down on the street, a couple hurries toward a car, dressed up and clearly late. The woman is laughing, tugging the man along by his hand. He looks at her like she's the only person that exists. I close my eyes. I'm trying. I whisper to the empty room. I really am. The apartment doesn't answer. Then there's a knock. It startles me so badly I spill coffee down the front of my shirt. For a second, I think I imagined it. Someone in the hallway, wrong door, wrong apartment. But then it comes again. 3 solid knocks. Deliberate. Unmistakable. I glance at my phone. 11:47 p.m. Nobody knocks on doors at 11:47 on New Year's Eve unless something's wrong. My first thought is an emergency in the building. My second thought is that it's Tom, drunk, concerned, deciding to check on me in person. Either way, my heart starts beating faster as I stand and walk toward the door. I pad across the carpet in my socks, my pulse suddenly racing for reasons I don't understand. When I lean in and look through the peephole, my brain stalls. There's a woman standing in the harsh hallway lighting, and for a second my mind refuses to accept what my eyes are telling it. Margot Sinclair, my CEO, standing outside my apartment door just minutes before midnight on New Year's Eve. I actually step back and look again, convinced exhaustion or too much caffeine has finally broken something in my head. But no, she's still there. No tailored suit. No polished boardroom armor. Just jeans, a simple top, auburn hair pulled back loosely. Snowflakes cling to her shoulders, slowly melting into dark spots on the fabric. She's holding a small paper bag and staring at my door like she's debating whether knocking again is a terrible idea. My hand hovers inches from the doorknob. This makes no sense. Margot Sinclair doesn't know where I live. She probably doesn't even know my name without checking an org chart. In 7 years at Summit, we've shared maybe 4 meetings. She's never once made eye contact with me. She lifts her hand again. I open the door before my fear can catch up with me. Her hand freezes midair. For a moment, we just stare at each other, equally startled, which feels unfair since she's the one who showed up. Hi, she says finally, then clears her throat. I'm sorry. This is incredibly unusual. You're probably wondering why I'm here. I am wondering many things, but none of them turn into words. She looks different out here. Softer. Younger, maybe, or just more real. In meetings, she's always calm and precise, explaining complicated issues like they're nothing. Right now, she looks nervous. I'm not here about work, she adds quickly, clearly reading the panic on my face. Nothing's wrong. The systems are fine. This isn't professional. It's personal. Or not personal exactly. Just not business. She hesitates, then gestures toward the door. May I come in? I promise I'm not here to fire you or anything equally terrifying. She lets out a small, awkward laugh, and the sound catches me off guard enough that I step aside automatically. She walks past me into my apartment, carrying cold air and the sharp scent of winter with her. I close the door and turn to find her slowly scanning the room, like she's trying to take in every detail at once. I'm sorry, I finally manage. I don't understand what's happening. She sets the paper bag on my kitchen counter and turns to face me. When she meets my eyes, really meets them, I realize I've never had her full attention before. It's intense in a way I'm not prepared for. Tom Henderson mentioned something earlier today, she says. We were reviewing holiday coverage. Your name came up. He said you volunteered to monitor systems tonight. From home. Alone. Because you didn't have plans. Heat floods my face. Fantastic. My boss's boss knows I'm alone on New Year's Eve. Somehow, that's worse than actually being alone. He didn't mean anything by it, she adds quickly. It was just conversation. But after that, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I was at home, about to watch the countdown by myself, and it kept replaying in my head that you were spending tonight alone. She pauses. I notice her hands trembling slightly before she shoves them into her coat pockets. This is going to sound inappropriate, she says quietly, but I looked up your address in the HR system. which is absolutely a violation of policy. You'd be justified in reporting me. Awkward, given that I'm the CEO, but still, you're right. I'm not going to report you, I say immediately. She exhales, relief flickering across her face. Thank you. She takes a breath. I came here because when Tom mentioned you were alone tonight, I recognized something in that description. I recognized myself, and I thought maybe neither of us should be alone. Not tonight. I lean against the wall because my legs suddenly feel unreliable. You're spending New Year's Eve alone. I spend every New Year's Eve alone, she says simply. Every Christmas, every Thanksgiving, every birthday. I'm very good at being alone. I've had years of practice. But tonight, when I realized you were doing the same thing, I thought maybe we could be less alone together. If that makes sense. It doesn't make sense. Nothing about this makes sense. Margot Sinclair is standing in my apartment, which still has pictures of my ex-wife on the walls, telling me she's lonely. My CEO is lonely. This woman who runs a tech company with over 300 employees, who gets interviewed by business magazines, who everyone at Summit talks about with a mix of awe and fear. I brought food, Margot says, gesturing to the bag. There's a deli on Capitol Hill that stays open late. I got sandwiches and some sides. I figured you probably haven't eaten much today. She's right. I had cereal for breakfast, and then forgot about food entirely. The kindness of the gesture hits me harder than it should, and I have to swallow against the sudden tightness in my throat. You didn't have to do that, I say. I know, but I wanted to. She pulls off her coat, then hesitates. Is this okay? Me being here, if it's too weird or uncomfortable, I can leave. I won't be offended. This whole thing was impulsive and probably inappropriate, and I'm realizing that now. But she doesn't look like she wants to leave. She looks like someone who took a leap and is desperately hoping the ground will be there when she lands. No, I hear myself say. It's okay. You can stay. Do you want some coffee, or I have tea? Or tea would be great, she says, and her shoulders relax. We stand there long after midnight, watching the sky light up with celebration. And I think about how one knock on one door changed everything. How showing up for someone when they need it most might be the bravest thing we can do. How success means nothing without someone to share it with. Happy New Year, Margot says softly. Happy New Year, I reply and mean it with my whole heart. The year stretches ahead, full of promise and possibility. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm not facing it alone. Be there for another moment. Looking at each other, and I think about how strange life is. How you can spend years working in the same building as someone and never really see them. How you can be lonely in a crowd but find connection in the weirdest circumstances. How sometimes the people you think have everything figured out are just as lost as you are. I'll make tea, I say. And I'll set out the food, Margot replies. We move into the kitchen, awkward at first, trying not to bump into each other in the small space. She finds plates in my cabinet while I fill the kettle. Neither of us mentions how surreal this is. Neither of us acknowledges that in 12 minutes it'll be a new year. And somehow, against all odds, neither of us will be spending it alone. We sit at my small table with our sandwiches and tea. For a few minutes, we just eat in comfortable silence. The food is good. Turkey and Swiss, simple but fresh. I realize how hungry I actually am. I've barely eaten all day. So Margot says, eventually wiping her mouth with a napkin. Tom also mentioned something else when we were talking about last spring. That server crash that happened late on a Friday night. I remember it vividly. 3 hours of panic, systems down, everyone freaking out. The great disaster of last April. How could I forget? I was in the office that night monitoring everything from the executive floor. I came down to see how the team was handling it. She pauses, looking at me carefully. I watched you work with Kevin, that new kid who'd only been there 2 months. He was the one who accidentally pushed the bad code that caused the crash. The memory comes back more clearly now. Kevin had been terrified, practically in tears. You spent an hour walking him through the recovery process. Margot continues, patient, calm. You could have blamed him, thrown him under the bus, made yourself look better. Instead, you told him that everyone makes mistakes. That the difference between good developers and great ones isn't that great ones don't mess up. It's that they learn from it and help others learn, too. I shrug, uncomfortable with the praise. He was a good kid, just scared. That moment stuck with me, Margot says quietly, because I realized I'd built my entire career on the opposite idea. That asking for help was weakness. That real leaders never showed vulnerability. That if you couldn't handle everything yourself, you didn't deserve to be in charge. She sets down her sandwich and looks at me directly. Can I tell you something I don't usually admit? Of course. I'm 41 years old. I have an apartment with views of Elliott Bay that travel magazines have photographed. I drive a car that cost more than most people make in a year. I've been in Forbes, given talks at conferences, been called one of the most successful women in tech. She pauses, and I'm completely alone. The words hang in the air between us. Not lonely, she continues. There's a difference. Lonely is temporary. This is just how my life is now. I have colleagues, not friends. I have business contacts, not relationships. I can't remember the last time someone called me just to talk, not to ask for something. Not because they needed a decision made just to talk. I don't know what to say. Margot Sinclair, the woman who runs a company worth millions, sitting in my cheap apartment, admitting she's isolated. My last date was 18 months ago, she says. And there's something raw in her voice. A guy from venture capital that someone set me up with. He spent the entire dinner on his phone. 3 times he took calls during the meal. When I finally said something, he looked at me like I was being unreasonable. Like his deals were obviously more important than the conversation we were supposed to be having. That's terrible, I say. The worst part, I stayed for dessert. I didn't walk out. I just sat there eating tiramisu, wondering when I'd become someone who accepted being treated like an interruption. She wraps her hands around her mug of tea, staring into it. Tonight, New Year's Eve, I was in my apartment with sushi from that place on First Avenue that charges $40 for a roll. I had champagne that cost more than your weekly groceries, probably. Everything was perfect, beautiful, expensive, but I couldn't name a single person who would actually miss me if I didn't show up to work on Monday. Not really miss me. Not in a way that mattered. She looks up at me. They'd miss what I do for them, the decisions I make, the problems I solve. But me, the actual person, nobody knows that person anymore. I'm not even sure I know that person. The vulnerability in her admission makes my chest tight. Here I've been thinking my life was falling apart because I couldn't afford car repairs. And this woman who seems to have everything is telling me she has nothing that matters. When Tom mentioned you were spending New Year's alone, Margot continues, something cracked inside me because I recognized myself in that description. A person spending a holiday alone, pretending it was a choice. She meets my eyes. I drove across the city to knock on your door because I thought maybe we could remind each other that we don't have to be alone. That asking for connection isn't weakness. The fireworks are getting louder now, more frequent as midnight approaches. Through the window, I can see occasional bursts of color lighting up the snowy sky. I'm glad you knocked, I say, and mean it completely. Margot smiles, a real smile that transforms her face. I'm glad you opened the door. We finish eating and move to the living room with our tea. I'm acutely aware of how shabby my furniture must look to her, the worn couch and mismatched chairs. But she settles in like it's the most natural thing in the world, tucking her legs under her. Can I ask you something? She says, anything. Tom mentioned you've been having a hard time lately. I don't want to pry, but if you want to talk about it. And just like that, the floodgates open. I tell her about Amanda, about how we'd met in college and got married too young, about how she'd wanted adventure and I'd wanted stability, about how we'd grown into different people who wanted different lives, about the morning she left, her suitcase by the door, telling me she loved me but couldn't do this anymore. She promised we'd stay friends. I say, surprised at how much it still hurts that we'd figure things out together. But then she met someone else and moved to Denver, and now we don't even text on birthdays. Margot listens without interrupting, her attention completely focused on me. The worst part, I continue, the words coming faster now, is that I can't even be mad at her. She wasn't wrong. I was so focused on work, on climbing the ladder, on making sure we had enough money saved. I thought that's what being a good husband meant, providing, being responsible. I run my hand through my hair. But I forgot to actually be present, to enjoy things, to live instead of just existing. You were doing what you thought was right, Margot says gently. But that's not enough, is it? Good intentions don't make up for being absent. My voice cracks slightly. Now I'm 35, living in the same apartment, doing the same job, and I can barely afford to fix my car. I work 50 hours a week, and I'm still one unexpected bill away from disaster. I lie awake at 3 o'clock in the morning doing math in my head. Can I afford new tires and still pay rent? If I get sick, how long before I lose everything? I look at her, feeling exposed, but unable to stop. You asked about plans for the new year. I plan to keep my head above water. That's it. That's all I've got. The silence that follows feels heavy. I said too much. This is my boss, not my therapist. But then Margot leans forward, her eyes intense. You're wrong about something. What? You think you're failing? You think you're barely holding on? She shakes her head. But do you know what I see when I look at your employee file? I wait, not trusting myself to speak. I see someone who hasn't missed a single day of work in 2 years. Someone who has 0 complaints filed against them. Someone whose performance reviews put them in the top 5% of the entire IT department. She holds my gaze. Last month, when we did those anonymous team surveys, your team gave you the highest satisfaction rating of any manager in the company. My throat feels tight. Do you know what they said about you? Margot continues. They said you were fair, that you actually listened to them, that you saw them as people, not just worker IDs. One developer wrote that you were the first manager who ever asked him about his family, who remembered his wife's name, who told him to leave early when his kid was sick without making him feel guilty about it. That's just being decent, I mutter. Exactly, Margot says firmly. That's exactly my point. It's basic decency. And it's so rare in corporate culture that people notice it, that they comment on it, that they remember it. She leans back. You think you're failing, but you're one of the best things about Summit Technologies. You just can't see it because you're too busy surviving. I stare at her, not knowing what to say. Outside, I can hear the countdown starting somewhere in the building. Voices raised in excitement, counting backward from 60. There's something I want to talk to you about, Margot says, and her tone shifts slightly. If you're open to hearing it, of course, I say though my heart starts racing. I've been reviewing how Summit operates, not just the technology side, but the culture, how we treat people. She sets down her mug, and I'm not proud of what I found. I stay quiet, letting her continue. We push people too hard. We celebrate working weekends like it's a badge of honor. We offer barely adequate health insurance and call it competitive. We have people burning out left and right. And instead of asking why, we just hire replacements. She shakes her head. It's not sustainable, and more importantly, it's not right. The countdown is at 30 now, getting louder. I want to fix it, Margot says. I want Summit to be a place where people can actually have lives outside of work, where mental health matters as much as productivity, where we measure success by more than just quarterly earnings. She looks at me intently. But I can't do it alone. I need someone who understands what it's actually like on the ground level. Someone people trust. Someone who actually gives a damn about human beings and not just metrics. 20 seconds. I want to create a new position, she continues, speaking faster now. Director of Employee Experience. Someone who reports directly to me and has real authority to make changes. Someone who can bridge the gap between leadership and everyone else. 10 seconds. What would that even look like? I ask, my mind racing. You'd work with department heads to implement better policies, flexible schedules, real mental health support. You'd identify problems before they become crisis, create programs that help people balance their work and personal lives. She pauses. And you'd work directly with me to reshape how Summit operates at a fundamental level. 5, 4, 3, you're talking about me. I say, barely audible over the countdown. 2, 1, yes. Margot says as cheers erupt throughout the building. I'm talking about you. Fireworks explode outside, lighting up the room in flashes of red and gold. The building shakes slightly with the collective celebration happening all around us. Margot and I just sit there looking at each other while the new year arrives with all its noise and light. I don't understand, I finally say when the immediate chaos dies down a bit. Why me? I'm just an IT manager. I don't have an MBA or experience in human resources. Exactly, Margot says firmly. I don't need another person with a business degree telling me how to maximize shareholder value. I need someone who knows what it's like to choose between car repairs and groceries. Someone who's been on the receiving end of corporate policies that sound good on paper but fall apart in reality. More fireworks outside. The sky a constant shimmer of color now. I've never done anything like this before, I say. Neither had I when I became CEO. We learn by doing. She softens her tone. Look, I'm not asking you to decide right now. Take some time. Think about it. But even as she says it, I feel something stirring inside me. Not just hope, but something bigger. Purpose. The idea that maybe my struggles hadn't been meaningless. Can I ask you something? I say anything. Is this really about the position, or do you feel sorry for me? The question comes out harsher than I intended, But I need to know. I can't take charity. Marot doesn't look offended. If I felt sorry for you, I'd write you a check and leave. This isn't charity. This is me recognizing talent that's been sitting right under my nose, being wasted on password resets and printer jams. My job is more than that. I say defensively. I know it is. And you do it brilliantly. But imagine what you could do with actual resources and authority. Imagine being able to help not just your team, but everyone at Summit. Her eyes are bright with genuine enthusiasm. I've seen your surveys. People love working for you. They feel heard and valued. That's not a skill you can teach in business school. That's who you are as a person. Through the window, the fireworks continue, painting the snowy sky in brilliant colors. The whole city seems to be celebrating, and for the first time in months, I feel like I might have something to celebrate too. What happens if I say yes and then fail? I ask quietly. Then we'll figure it out together, Margot says simply. I'm not expecting perfection. I'm expecting honesty and effort. And if something doesn't work, we'll try something else. I look at her. Really look at her. This powerful, successful woman who could have been anywhere tonight. And she chosen to sit in my shabby apartment, offering me a chance I never would have imagined. Okay, I hear myself say. Okay, I'll do it. Margot's face breaks into a genuine smile, the kind that reaches her eyes. Really? Really? I mean, I'm terrified and I have no idea what I'm doing, but yes. I laugh, feeling lighter than I have in months. When would I start? Let's say 2 weeks. That gives you time to wrap up your current projects and for me to make the announcement. She pulls out her phone. I'll have HR draw up the paperwork after the holiday. We can meet next week to discuss details. Details. Vision. The words feel foreign. I'd spent so long just trying to survive that I'd forgotten what it felt like to plan to imagine possibilities. You'd get a significant raise, of course, Margot adds. Better benefits, normal hours, and most importantly, you'd have the authority to actually make a difference. We talk for another hour. Margot sharing ideas she's been thinking about. On-site counseling services, generous parental leave, mandatory vacation days that people actually have to take, remote work options. The list goes on, and with each item, I feel my mind opening up to what could be possible. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, Margot finally stands up to leave. The fireworks have stopped and the snow has started again, falling in thick, quiet flakes. The city looks clean and fresh through my window, like it's ready for new beginnings. Thank you, I say at the door, and the words feel too small for what I'm feeling. Not just for the job, but for tonight, for seeing me. Thank you for opening the door, Margot replies, both literally and figuratively. She pulls on her coat, then hesitates. I meant what I said earlier about being alone all the time. But tonight, she smiles. Tonight was different. Good. Different. It was, I agree. Maybe we could do this again sometime. Not just business meetings. I mean just this. I'd like that, she says, and something passes between us. Something that feels like the beginning of something more than a professional relationship. After she leaves, I don't go to bed. I stand at the window watching the occasional fireworks still lighting up the sky. Different neighborhoods celebrating in their own time, their own way. And I feel something I haven't felt in so long. I'd almost forgotten what it was like. Hope the next weeks move fast. I give notice to my current role, and my team throws me an impromptu goodbye party that actually makes me tear up. Word spreads quickly about the new position, and I start getting emails from people across the company sharing their ideas and concerns. It's overwhelming, but also energizing. Margot and I meet multiple times to discuss strategy. We start with listening sessions, just going around to different departments and asking people what would make their work lives better. The answers are surprisingly simple. More flexibility, better communication, feeling valued. It isn't rocket science, but it requires commitment and follow through. We implement flex scheduling first. Then we bring in actual counselors, not just a hotline. We establish clear guidelines about after-hours emails and weekend work. Some managers resist, complain that we're going soft, but Margot backs me up every time, and slowly the culture starts to shift. And somewhere in those long planning sessions and coffee meetings, something else starts shifting, too. The way Margot looks at me during presentations, the way she laughs at my jokes. Real laughter that lights up her whole face. The way we end up talking until late at night, long after the business discussion has ended just because neither of us wants to leave. One evening in late March, we're working late in her office reviewing employee feedback surveys. The sky outside is turning purple with dusk. The satisfaction scores are up 18%. Margot says, looking at her laptop, retention is improving. Even productivity is steady despite reduced hours. She closes the computer and looks at me. You're doing incredible work. We're doing incredible work. I correct. None of this happens without your support. Still, you should be proud. I meet her eyes, and something passes between us. Something that's been building for weeks, but neither of us has acknowledged. Margot, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you happy? The question surprises even me. I mean, with all the changes we're making for everyone else, are you any less alone than you were on New Year's Eve? She's quiet for a long moment. No, she admits. But I'm working on it. Learning to let people in is harder than I expected. Maybe you're trying with the wrong people, I say softly. Margot stands up and walks to the window, her back to me. What are you saying? I stand too, my heart pounding. I'm saying that somewhere between New Year's and now, you became more than my boss, more than a colleague. You became someone I think about when I wake up, someone I look forward to seeing every day. She turns around, and I can't read her expression. We work together. That complicates things. I know. And if you want to pretend I never said anything, we can do that. But I had to be honest. I take a breath. You knocked on my door when I needed someone most. You saw me when I felt invisible. And I see you too, Margot. Not the CEO. You. For a long moment, she just looks at me. Then she crosses the distance between us in 3 steps and kisses me. It's soft and tentative at first, then deeper like we're both starving for connection. When we finally pull apart, she's smiling. I was hoping you'd say something. I've been trying to figure out if it was appropriate for weeks. Probably not, I admit. But I don't care. Me neither. That was 8 months ago. Now it's New Year's Eve again, and everything has shifted. Margot arrives at my apartment at 8, carrying groceries for her grandmother's lasagna recipe. We cook together, and my kitchen fills with laughter and the smell of garlic and tomatoes. She tells me about her day. While I chop vegetables, I tell her about the new mentorship program we're launching in January. At 11:55, we bundle up and step onto my balcony. The city spreads out below us, lights twinkling, fireworks already starting in scattered bursts. Margot slides her arm around my waist, and I pull her close. Thank you for knocking, I whisper. Thank you for opening the door, she replies. The countdown begins somewhere nearby, voices carrying on the cold air. 10, 9, 8. Margot turns to face me, her eyes reflecting the colored lights. 7, 6, 5. I cup her face in my hands for 3, 2, and at 1. As fireworks explode across Seattle sky in brilliant cascades of color, I kiss her like it's both an ending and a beginning because it is. The old loneliness is gone, replaced by something I never thought I'd find. Connection, partnership, love. We stand there long after midnight, watching the sky light up with celebration. And I think about how one knock on one door changed everything. How showing up for someone when they need it most might be the bravest thing we can do. How success means nothing without someone to share it with. Happy New Year, Margot says softly. Happy New Year, I reply and mean it with my whole heart. The year stretches ahead, full of promise and possibility. And for the first time in longer than I can remember, I'm not facing it alone.